Alright guys, going to tie up a Home Invader now. First step, just going to take some Zap-A-Gap and some lead wire. It's probably some 020 lead wire. And from about the point of the hook, going to wind that lead over top of that Zap-A-Gap. Leave maybe a 1/16 of an inch space for what will end up as the head. Next, going to take some flat wax nylon in yellow. Just kind of cover up a little bit of that lead. And then going to take some dumbbell eyes. I've been using brass more just from a durability standpoint. A lot of times when we fish, we're smacking these off of rocks and bridge pilings and boats and things like that, and the brass just holds up a lot better than the lead. But tie them on whatever style of dumbbell eye you want to. These are some brass ones from Hairline that I like. A couple of figure 8s to get them started. Pretty good amount of Zap-A-Gap. Then I'm going to go up and over those eyes, underneath, and maybe a dozen wraps or so. And then I'm going to do some more wraps and just go around those thread wraps that we just did, kind of underneath the eye. Check and make sure that they're nice and perpendicular to the shank. And then move my thread to behind those lead eyes. I'm going to take a pair of marabou plumes. We're going to do kind of a yellow and white version of this, which is a really good color, particularly when we fish out here in early spring and chase big ones. You're fishing dirty water or early season. This is one of my top picks. When you're picking out some marabou plumes, you definitely want to use the nicest ones you can find. And what I mean by nice is relatively thin stem with nice fine wispy tips and then some good fluff back here. And I'm just going to line up the very tips of the two plumes and kind of gather them together. This fly is going to swim upside down like a clouser, so we want that white one on the belly. Oh, and maybe, let's see, 1 to 2.5 shank lengths. Nothing set in stone there. I'm going to wind those back just about to the point of the hook, like so. Trim the butt ends there. And this is an important step. I do like to put some super glue down here. If you didn't glue it and you pull real hard on those marabou feathers, maybe when you're unhooking a fish, they can come out. So just a little bit of glue there. And then I'm going to take some foxtail fur. I really do like this material, but you can use any kind of fur you want to, even synthetic fur. And then might grab it in the middle and pull out some of the short fibers. I pull out any real long ones. And then I'm just going to take and fan that fox fur, try and get a nice even spread so you don't have any big lumps of it anywhere. And then I'm just going to kind of transfer that to maybe the fattest part of the marabou is where you want to line up the tips. And then just kind of fold that around. Loose gathering wrap all the way around, and then pull it tight. And if you did it right, you should have even coverage of that fox, all the way around the shank. If you didn't get to a spot, you can always put some more in there. From here, just gonna pull what's left over and tie in front of it and move my thread up to in front of the lead eyes. And just maybe if these are real long, trim them a little. These are going to kind of get buried into the body of the fly. They won't really be too noticeable. And then I'm going to take some more fox fur and essentially repeat that same process. Pull out the shorts, pull out the long ones. For the smaller sizes of this, I do like to lose most of those guard hairs. But for a larger one like this, I'll leave quite a few of them in. Once again, spread it way out in your fingers, fan it out, get it even. And then these tips, they're not going to line up with the other tips, but just short of them. Gathering wrap. And a couple of wraps to secure. Just, you know, before you really lash it down, you can kind of manipulate it around. Make sure you got good even coverage. And I'm going to trim those as close as I can, what's left there. Any little fibers left over, you can try and pull them back and just tie in front of them, keep them out of the eye of that hook. Next thing, I'm going to take my flash and I'm going to do some UV tan and some speckled gold. Speckled gold is one of my favorite flavors. It screams baby whitefish, amongst other things. I do that UV crystal flash and I cut the whole length, and I'm just going to do maybe, I guess there's half a dozen fibers in there. Wrap that full length around the thread, and then it's just a very easy transfer. 2 wraps. Trim the ends. Do the same thing with the speckled gold. 6/8 strands. Once again, wrap it around the thread, and a very easy transfer of that material right where you want to. Another advantage to applying that flash like that, you don't have to go in and trim the butt ends out, which can get tricky up near the eye of the hook. And then lastly, I'm going to take a Metz Magnum cape. I absolutely love these things. Couldn't live without them. They make the breed the best kind of streamer style hackle in grizzly. Nice markings. And I'm just going to select a pair of feathers off of that. And I would encourage you to, when you're picking out feathers, try and pick out feathers where you're going to use the vast majority of the feather. You know, so in other words, if you got a fly this big, you want to use some flies that are approximately that size. It makes them much easier to tie in. You know, where you have these fat stems, that's where you want to be tying it in. Where you get into trouble is if you're, you know, just using the top half of the feather that has that really fine stem, which tends to roll on you. So I'm just going to line up the tips, just like so, and then make a measurement. I want those grizzly tips to extend out past that marabou just a little bit, right to the eye of the hook. I've got my mark. I'm going to trim them both. And I'm going to tie one on one side, one on the other. I do like to try and tie these in on the sides of the shank. Helps keep them in place a little bit more predictably. And then just kind of lash those on. One of the tricks with seating these feathers, which is not super always easy to do, is don't use real firm thread wraps, at least to start. Gentle wraps, make sure they're going to behave for you, and then maybe cinch it a little tighter. I never go full tightness on a thread wrap when I'm lashing down these feathers. Just because the next step, I'm just going to do a half hitch on there, whip finish, is some Zap-A-Gap. And once this glue dries, those feathers are never, ever, ever coming out of there. And we've got our completed Home Invader. Couple of the other details that I really do like about this fly is very easy to throw. You know, fox fur and marabou and feathers, you know, they don't drag a lot in the air like some synthetics do. Everything on this fly moves. The fox, obviously the marabou moves a ton, and certainly the feathers. And when this kind of fluffy material, you know, gets wet and slicks down, you've got just an absolute money, you know, streamlined baitfish shape. The other thing that I really like about it is the variety of ways that you can fish this, particularly slow. This fly, you know, when we fish a lot in my boat, we do a lot of what's called the do-nothing strip, where you just get tight to it and let the current, you know, do its job, fish it slowly, fish it very deliberately, and cover water. You can also strip it super fast too, or anywhere in between. But a huge advantage to this bug. Tie it in very large sizes. This would be considered a large size, you know, particularly for a single hook version. You know, all the way down to a little size, you know, 2-inch little size 8, which can be, you know, pretty darn effective too. Tie it in a wide variety of colors to match different bait fish or not match different bait fish. You know, this color right here is, you know, a really nice attractor color that we like to fish in maybe stained water is when it works its best. But tie yourself up some and enjoy.